My message, I am not a preacher. Let me say that before we get into it. I am not a preacher. I am someone who can reflect and can share what God has put in my heart with you. And so the style may be different here because I am not a pastor. So just a fair warning on that as we move forward through this together. I titled my message this morning as The Unnecessary Excuses. We live in a world of challenges. We have obligations. We have commitments. Sometimes our broken world overfeeds us with information that sometimes is true, sometimes it's not. And sometimes we also feel overwhelmed. And the list can go on. These things create much more noise for us that sometimes we seize those noises and we try to create some reasons for us to find excuses. While those are truth, while those excuses can be legit, sometimes we just let ourselves carried away and we ignore who we are. We ignore the calling of God. We ignore the potentials that God has in each of us when He wants to use us. As I stand here today, I will be sharing a little bit about some of my own things with you. But if you hear something about me, please do remove me from the picture and take it as a way of thinking about yourself as well, so that glory goes back to the Lord at the end of my sharing with you. And that would incorporate my journey with World Relief, the organization that I have the humbling privilege today to be leading as the executive director. Let's look at what I name as being the excuses, and that sometimes they can be legit. Let's go in Exodus 6, verse 6 to 12. Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. And I will bring you to the land I swore with uplifted hand to give to Abraham, to Isaac and Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord. Moses reported this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him because of their discouragement and harsh labor. Then the Lord said to Moses, go, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites go out of this country. But Moses said to the Lord, if the Israelites will not listen to me, why would Pharaoh listen to me, since I speak with faulty lips? And that's the part that I wanted to focus on, as I said that, our excuses could be legit. We have seen through the book of Exodus to this point how God has been using Moses to do some miracles to the Israelites, but they refuse to listen to the things or the actions and the miracles that they have been seeing. And then God asked Moses to go and tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. Now this is where, for me, it's kind of like Moses standing there and looking at God and like, man, I'm wondering what's wrong with you, right? Like everything that we've been doing together with the Israelites, they did not listen, and now you're asking me to go and talk to the king. Are you out of your mind? That could be a question that each of us can pose, right? And it is true. I mean, he presents his excuse here that he has faulty lips, and that there is no way he would be able to convince Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. 16 years ago, I came to the US seeking political asylum. Now you have heard that I was born and raised in Chad. Chad is a Francophone country. Therefore, we speak French. We don't speak English. With that being said, you can realize that my English is only 16 years old because I learned English here and of course at World Relief, because I was one of the participants of this very organization that like I said, I have the humbling privilege to be leading today. I speak with accent when I speak French and when I speak English. And with that as baggage that I carried with me, when in January I was asked to step into this role as of the executive director, I brought those excuses with me. That one, my English is just 16 years old. Two, I speak with accent, and therefore I don't speak eloquently. How could someone like me be the executive director of a major organization as World Relief Western Washington? Those were my excuses. And I'm sure that every one of us, whenever there is an opportunity to stand into something, we try to bring those excuses with us. Someone even told me once that, Medard, you will be a good leader, but before you get there, you have to work on your accent. And that has always been part of me whenever something comes as an opportunity for me to step in. As a congregation and as members of Hillside Church, we have been partnering together for years, and God has been doing great things in this very community, in this partnership that we have built together. You may have a family member that you're caring for. You may have some financial obligations that you need to meet. You may have some lack of cultural awareness that makes it hard for you to take the step forward and to welcome someone who's from a different culture into your midst. You may be an introverted person and you don't want to be around many people. We all have those things with us that could be excuses that we can present. And those, again, like I said, are legit excuses, because Moses presented his own excuses to God as well. Or maybe you have been asked to help with the refugee crisis, which recently we have seen with the fall of Kabul in Afghanistan and Ukraine, which is still under war right now. But again, all those things may feel overwhelming for all of us. And those reasons, again, could be legit. And that takes me to my second point this morning. The reality in all of this is that at the end of the day, it is not about any of us. Yeah. It is not about us. Let's take a look at Exodus 4 from 10 to 13. Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." The Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who make them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord?" And that's the thing that we need to focus on. I speak with accent. That's true. My English is 16 years old. That's true. You may have financial obligations. That is true. But is it because of us? No, it is about God. Because when He called us to something, He will provide what is needed for the glory to come back to Him. And we should not be hiding ourselves behind those excuses that, again, could be legit. But they should not be limiting God from accomplishing what He wants to accomplish through each of us. When we take ourselves out of the picture, God can move things so that glory comes to him. Our human nature is wired in such a way that we tend to look at what we don't have rather than what we have. The reality is that our characters only emerges through challenges. There is no courage without danger. There is no perseverance without obstacles. Patience is learned through tribulations. Compassion is born out of suffering of others. And if I may take a real quick pause here, when we saw the situation in Afghanistan, if you have been attentive enough, you would have seen how many people came forward. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is happening, right? Compassion was born out of that in many people, especially those who have not been paying attention to the refugee crisis before what happened in Afghanistan. Our faith or our trust in God grows when we have needs. Most importantly, it is not even about what we have, but rather who we have. It is about who we have, not what we have or what we don't have. When God wants to use us, he knows our limitations. So please, let's refrain from saying that I don't speak English or I have accent. He knows our limitations. But despite our limitation, he calls us into something. He calls us into something. And like I said, we just need to pull ourselves out of the picture and let him do his mighty work through us for the glory of his name. Just look at how he reminded Moses, who made humans mouths. That right there to me, it covers it all, right? Like you can say, I am an introverted person, or I don't have money to give. I don't have time to give. I don't know this culture, therefore I'm not even going to mingle with them. At the end of the day, who's bigger? Who do we have? It's God. Do you remember when Jesus called his first disciples? When he called Simon and then later on Peter, and his brother Andrew, or when he called James and John. They were fishermen. Jesus did not have even a resume of them. He didn't even ask for a resume. And these guys were in the boat. And when he told them, come and follow me, they just dropped things and they followed him. Now, they could also have excuses at that point, right? You are doing a ministry of God and we're not even pastors and you're calling us to join you and, it's obvious here. But that was not the point. Jesus just wanted them to be available. And then, thinking about this, as you know, I'm an executive, right? And so when you're talking about bringing people on board to do the work, you want to make sure you have the right people so that they can carry the work forward. But Jesus called them first, so the recruitment happened before he even started teaching them what needs to happen. And that's where, after calling them, they end up to the mountain, the Sermon on the Mountain. That was when he started teaching them what to do. The training comes later because he just wanted them to be available for him to use them. Yeah. God is not looking for our capabilities, but he is actually looking for our availability. When we give him what we have, our time, our expertise, our finances, he will multiply them. Think of the story of when Jesus fed 5,000 people. 5 loaves, 2 fish, right? What happened, he asked for food. They gave it to him. And when he took it and gave it back to them, it got multiplied. And that's the thing that we need to focus on. Whatever we have, when we give to God and he gives it back to us, it gets multiplied. And that's exactly for the glory of his name. Whatever our limitations are, whatever the blessings that God has given us, let's make sure that we give it to him. Pastor, before Jeff came up and talked about the partnership that we have with Hillside Church. We have turned a paved parking lot into a community garden in this very community. We have it as a congregation, right? We gave it to God. Now it transformed it into a community garden. And did you hear what Pastor said earlier about the city leaders coming around this? And now it's going to move forward into something bigger and elsewhere. That's what it means, giving to God. When he turns it back to us, he multiplies it for the glory of his name. Do you know what the real issue is? We are just too busy, all of us. We are just too busy to pay attention to what he has been doing, what he has been busy doing for us. Let me tell you a story of my first job in the U.S. So right after my asylum was granted, I joined World Relief as a program participant in one of our programs that we call Match Grant, and that's where I began learning English. And then with the help of World Relief, I put together my very first resume. They took me into different job interviews, and I ended up landing on this job as a security agent at one of the major hotels in the place. I studied, and I had a man who was training me for 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks. So I was just shadowing him, and then he will carry the radio, we walk through the hotel, and he will answer the calls and so on. So he was doing the work, and I was following him. 2 weeks went by, and we came on duty, and the guy took the radio and put it down on the desk. Medard, today you're going to run the show, and I am not going to answer any call. Now, with all the excuses that I presented before, right? I can't even hear what people were saying on the radio whenever we get a call. And this guy is telling me that I will be handling all the calls today. I was so freaked out, and the only thing in my mind was that this guy is out of his mind. Like this guy that for 2 weeks I thought God put on my way to help me, and now He's making me feel so afraid, saying that I will be leading the shift. I took the radio, we carried the shift forward, and we finished. We went home. The next day we came back, I had to lead the show. And there we went. Now, I presented my excuses. I ended up working at that hotel a few months later, to become the security supervisor and to become the manager at that hotel. Now, I said in January, I became the executive director of World Relief after about 15 years in the US. But I was still carrying that excuse with me. I started the shift 2 weeks later to run the shift. But everything that God has been doing for me through those years, all the way through, I was too busy to pay attention to it. And every time that there is an opportunity, I wanted to bring my excuses forward. And that's what we usually do. And the reason being that we just have been too busy to be attentive to the things that God is doing. Let's look at Mark 4, 35 to 41. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him alone, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious gale came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the wave, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Now, this is what I mean by we just have been too busy to be attentive to what God has been doing. I mean, we're talking about the disciples of Christ here. They've been with him, and he has been operating miracles after miracles after miracles, but they can't even realize because, no one is paying attention here. And now they're asking themselves, "My gosh, man, who's even this guy? I mean, even the wind can obey him. Where have you been all this time when Jesus has been doing miracles? Can you just be attentive and know that he has been doing things, and every time that he does one, just give him glory?" And this is what we do as human beings. We are just too busy. We don't think of how God is building us up. We don't know, or we don't think of where our financial resources came from. All the opportunities that we have, we just keep on forgetting. And when it's time to put it to God's work, we try to bring forward excuses. Whenever I'm reading stories about Jesus and his disciples, I think about Peter and his performance. Now, we're all too familiar with Peter, right? He's the one that will jump his mouth just like this and, just doing crazy things and asking questions. And like I said, together as a community, we turn a paved parking lot into a community garden. And we are building a commercial teaching kitchen in this very church, in this congregation. And with my own story that I shared with you, with the opportunities that as congregation or as individuals we have been able to do, a few questions that I want to leave you with this morning. What is the storm in your own life right now? What are you afraid of when God is calling you to step into a partnership with him? Where do you still need faith that he can help you with? What are the things that he entrusted you with that you can put into use for other people who are coming into the community? Those are the questions that I want to leave you with. Ask yourself, what is it that you can pull yourself out of it and let God lead the way so that he can get glory through the blessings that he has provided for us, either as a congregation or as individual members of this congregation. Amen. Think about it as you go about the day. Thank you. Amen.